3 men, weathered and wary, ventured into the woods. Thomas, the leader, exuded a grizzled determination. David, the skeptic, grumbled under his breath. Young Daniel, eyes wide with apprehension, clung to their every word. They sought a hidden path, a forgotten trail whispered in hushed tones. An eerie silence enveloped them, the trees whispering secrets of an ancient terror. The air hung heavy, thick with the musk of damp earth and decaying leaves. Shadows stretched long and gnarled, twisting familiar shapes into menacing figures. A sense of unease settled upon them, a primal instinct warning of unseen eyes.
Stay close,
Thomas muttered, his voice barely a murmur in the stillness. They pressed onward, their boots sinking into the soft, yielding ground. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest seemed to come alive with whispers. The men knew they were not alone. The air grew colder, and an unsettling feeling settled in the pit of their stomachs. They knew they had to press on, but every step felt heavier than the last. The trees loomed over them, casting long, eerie shadows that danced in the fading light. Suddenly, a distant howl pierced the silence, sending shivers down their spines. They exchanged nervous glances, realizing that the unknown dangers of the woods were closer than they had imagined. The forest deepened, the canopy above growing thick and impenetrable, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. The last rays of sunlight struggled to pierce through the dense foliage, casting the woods in a perpetual twilight, a haunting glow that made everything look surreal and otherworldly. The air grew colder, a bone-chilling dampness that seeped into their clothes and chilled them to the core. The mist swirled around their feet, making the ground seem to disappear beneath them. David swore he heard whispers, faint and sibilant, carried on the wind. They seemed to come from all directions, making it impossible to pinpoint their source. He glanced nervously over his shoulder, his hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife at his belt. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. The trees seemed to close in around them.
Did you hear that?
It's just the wind, I hope.
But even Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The shadows seemed to move, and every rustle of leaves felt like a threat. The woods held their breath, an expectant hush that pressed in on them from all sides. It was as if the forest itself was waiting for something to happen. Daniel, his face pale and drawn, stumbled over a gnarled root. His eyes were wide with fear, darting around as if expecting something to leap out at him. He cried out, more from surprise than pain. The sound was sharp and sudden, breaking the oppressive silence. The sound, sharp and piercing, shattered the silence like glass. It was a jarring contrast to the quiet that had enveloped them. It echoed through the trees, lingering long after it should have faded. The forest seemed to hold on to the sound, amplifying their fear and making the silence that followed even more unsettling. They continued their trek, their pace quickening with each passing moment. Every step felt heavier than the last. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees pressing closer, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, swirling around them like a chorus of disembodied voices. A low growl rumbled through the undergrowth, sending a shiver down their spines. David froze, his blood turning to ice. He had heard that sound before, in the dead of night, in the darkest corners of his nightmares.
What was that?
Daniel whispered, his voice barely audible. His eyes darted nervously from side to side, searching the shadows for the source of the sound. Thomas raised a hand, silencing him.
Quiet. Something's out there. We should turn back.
No, we must press on.
He could feel it now, a presence, dark and malevolent, stalking them through the undergrowth. They pushed forward, their senses on high alert. The forest floor became treacherous, littered with fallen branches and tangled undergrowth. The air hung heavy with the metallic scent of blood, making their stomachs churn. Just when their hope began to dwindle, a faint light flickered through the trees. It appeared as a beacon in the encroaching darkness, a glimmer of salvation in the heart of their despair.
Look, over there.
It could be a trap.
With renewed determination, they stumbled towards the light, their weary bodies driven by the promise of safety and warmth. Section 5. The Hunt Begins. As they drew closer, the light resolved itself into a small clearing, a rare break in the dense, oppressive forest. A fire crackled merrily in the center, casting dancing shadows that stretched and contorted, mimicking the fear that gnawed at their insides. The flame seemed almost alive, flickering with a sinister intent. But the clearing was deserted, an unsettling emptiness that made their hearts race. No welcoming figures huddled around the flames, no sign of human life. The campsite looked as if it had been abandoned in a hurry, belongings scattered haphazardly. Only the eerie silence and the oppressive presence that seemed to emanate from the very woods themselves. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, watching their every move. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper. A twig snapped under David's foot, the sound echoing unnaturally loud in the stillness. The sound, sharp and sudden, shattered the stillness like a gunshot, sending a startled animal fleeing into the darkness. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end and a cold dread washed over him. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon him.
Stay close.